A waking nightmare, shining a light on the health risks of not getting enough sleep and paying a price for the digital dream, the criminals who want to hold your phone to ransom. I'm Martin Stanford. This is Inside. Welcome to Inside. How did you sleep last night? If the answer is not very well, you're not alone. We're all getting worse at getting enough rest. And while being tired and grumpy is one thing, being awake for too long can also be seriously bad for your health. Insight's Tag Enright reports.
Sleep is something we cannot function without. A bad night can ruin the following day. And yet many of us are becoming more cavalier in our sleeping habits, and the culprit is a shiny device in the palm of our hand.
Are we getting worse at sleeping?
The short answer is yes. I think there are social elements, particularly with modern technology and the introduction of social media. Individuals' brains are constantly active. People can communicate with them day and night, Twitter, Facebook, and it's very difficult not to respond, and it's quite addictive.
A recent study of college students in the United States found that 49% checked their phones during the night, and not just to check the time. 32% did so at least twice per night, and 17% more than that. The American Sleep Society reported that 90% of adults it surveyed use their phones or tablets within an hour of going to bed.
So with social media, it's a case of people not giving themselves the opportunity to sleep.
The important thing is you need a lead into sleep. So you probably remember yourself as a child. Your mother and your father would give you a hot, warm drink. They would put you in your pajamas after washing you, maybe comb your hair, read a book, and then you went into sleep and had a very peaceful sleep. That sort of thing does not happen because of iPhones. Blue light from the iPhone keeps your brain very active. People contacting you at all manner of hours.
What's the adult version of that parental process of preparing yourself to go to sleep?
What you need to do is set your laptop aside, set your iPhone aside, maybe read a book, maybe have a warm drink, and then have these sort of brushing your teeth, combing your hair, doing your ablutions, maybe rinsing your face, getting into a nice warm bed at the right temperature. So all those things are very important to encourage the entry into sleep.
And for those who think curating their social media presence is the real priority, a word of warning: not sleeping enough can make you fat.
If you don't sleep, the body pushes a hormone called adrenaline. Adrenaline is the one that makes your heart beat faster, gets you ready to run away, and that adrenaline pours sugar into your bloodstream. But clearly you're in bed, you're not going to be running anywhere. So that sugar is then laid down as fat. And the next night, the same thing happens, so more fat is laid down. And also you wake up every morning feeling hungry, saying, I've got to have more energy levels, so you eat more. So there's a virtual cycle of poor sleep, laying down fat, eating more, laying down fat, eating more.
So if you want to stay svelte for those selfies, it's best to get plenty of shut-eye. Tag Enright reporting for Insight.
Well, joining me now to discuss this a little further is Nick Littlehales, who's a sleep coach. We need to learn how to sleep better, correct?
We certainly do, yes.
What do we do wrong, typically?
Pretty much everything.
Really?
Yeah. It's, I think, how much education did you have at school on sleep? What did you get from your parents? And right down the line. And even with top professionals around the world, whether it's doctors, nurses, pilots, they get very little educational time on it. So we tend to make it up. We take it for granted. It's certainly not a performance criteria. However you've slept or slept at all, when you wake up in the morning, you still go off and do what you do. So it's just a random approach that does not work in today's world.
Is it true that all of us find our own optimum sleep period, whether it's 6 hours sleep, 8 hours sleep, whatever?
I don't think anybody's trying to do that, to be honest. I think they wake up in the morning, they get on with their day, and then when it gets around to maybe there's 7 or 8 hours left before you've got to get up and do it again, you'll sort of go, I've got to go to sleep. Some people just pass out because they're overactive or they've got it wrong during the day. So I don't think you actually wake up in the morning and go, right, I've got this very specific routine. I sleep between 6:30 and 11. I get 8 hours every single day, 365 days of the year.
Well, what I was alluding to is we hear some high performers, I mean, notably some past prime ministers of this country said they could survive on only 4 hours sleep. Is that nonsense? I mean, they force themselves to survive on 4 hours, but they could enjoy 8 if they tried.
They don't naturally force themselves to do it. You know, like I say, if you just had a little bit of education and look back at how humans have always slept, you'll look that we always slept in what's called a polyphasic way. That is, shorter periods more often. The Victorians used to sleep for a few hours, wake up, sleep for a few hours. It was only when we actually invented the electric light bulb, where we put light into our lives, blue light, because everything was firelight, gaslight before then that doesn't affect us. So up until that point, we've always done it. So you can sleep for shorter periods at night, you can sleep midday between 1 and 3, you can sleep early evening between 5 and 7, because it's perfectly natural for the human to do it. So there are sleep-wake cycles that are actually sort of 20 minutes every 4 hours, and people survive on it. So there are people who've got certain occupations, and in sport I work with people maybe single-handed round the world sailors at sea for 3 months. So you have to adapt.
The idea of 8 hours of sleep is just nonsense in those circumstances, isn't it?
Just nonsense.
And is this a tiny marginal gain or is this significant improvement? If you get your sleep program right, what sort of improvements do you see?
I think from my clients, and since I wrote a book in October, it came published. It covers all the little aspects of how to improve the way you approach it in simple, practical ways. And I can say that most people's reactions are things like, you've changed my life.
It's quite dramatic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for some people, it can be very dramatic, very dramatic.
And in terms of, we alluded to the phone and fiddling with your phones. I didn't realise people did that quite so much, although I must admit I may be guilty of quick check of, you know, what the emails have come in before going to bed. But a lot of people have interruptions in their sleep, don't they? Maybe 2 trips to the bathroom during the night. That's unusual, or is that quite common?
No, very common, very common. It's simply because during the course of the day, you'll be taking on fluids, hydrating, your particular diet. If it's heavy with vegetables and fruit, there's a lot of water in there, so you might be overhydrating. And if you don't have a particular approach, like a pre-sleep routine, then basically as you go into sleep, you'll be going through various different stages of sleep, but the brain is constantly just waiting for the bladder to fill for you to wake up and empty it. So even when you alluded before about 8 hours sleep, a lot of people think they're getting that, or trying to get it. But if you're waking up a couple of times, maybe overheating, partners disturbing you, snoring, all that sort of stuff, mouth breathing, all those little elements means that you get stuck in the less restorative recovery stages. So it's not necessarily a quality and quantity battle with this, but you certainly can improve what you get from every period.
It's interesting, isn't it? As young infants, we probably take our children through a pre-sleep routine, don't we? Maybe it's have a meal, bit of playtime, bath time, and then read a story with mum or dad or whoever's around, and then off you go to bed. Now, when we become adults, we throw all that out. Should we adopt that more childish routine?
I think so. I think everybody, I mean, I'm about to get my 4th grandchild, and parents do adopt that routine, don't they? And they try to make the environment, sound, smells, everything going on to get them to a point of sleep. And if you just then, like you say, throw that away and you pile 2 children into one room, you chuck them on bunk beds or whatever, they have all sorts of stimulus on the walls. Well, that's always gone on. But since the late 90s, when I was an international sales and marketing director without a phone, on an international director's basis, now you look at what they've got available to them from a very early age. If they get given a mobile phone for security purposes, it could be quite young. And parents use these tools to entertain their children while they can get on with other things. It is their world. They don't know anything different. It's their pencil, it's their paper. So all you have to say to them and look in that particular area that, yes, they do emit blue light, which is daylight, which is very positive light, but it's our interaction with blue light, how much we get every day. But I'm more interested in the information overload. There is just so much information that we can access. We're constantly looking at it. So what we don't is get any opportunity to have a little recovery break. So that's how we like to look at it in sport, is if you don't have the recovery break, we don't focus on the blue light.
So much more we could talk here, but what about food intake? People speak volumes about, well, I just have a little nightcap, so it's maybe an alcoholic drink or not, or maybe it's a milky drink, or maybe it's, oh, I always have to drink a whole glass of water before I go to bed. Is there a magic, solution to what's the right thing to do? Or not eating at all, for instance. I don't eat at all before I go to bed. What's the
I think those sort of things
rules?
creep into your life. Maybe you get some supplements that's got valerian in it, or melatonin, or it's some sort of smells, essential oils. Or you start to bring little things into your life that sort of become almost like a placebo, that I will go to sleep. The danger is that might become a sleeping tablet, which can be very counterproductive. In principle, as you walk towards your sleep time, as you get to that particular period, you just want to stop doing everything. That's it. You want to wind down, you want to move from warm to cool, you want to move from light to dark, and you want to sort of reconnect with being a human being and not some tech robot. And once you get to that particular point, you really don't want to be taking anything in, food or fluids, because that's just triggering things. And if you take water to bed, as you pointed out earlier, all you're doing is telling the brain, we're going to wake up and drink that later on, so it won't take you down into the deeper sleep stages because you've already made it aware of something else.
Good to talk to you, Nick. Nick Littlehouse, thank you very much indeed for being with us today.
It's a pleasure.
This is Insight. Coming up, your money or your data. We'll be looking at the huge rise in the number of ransom attacks on our computers.